Welcome to this week's edition of MDM's Quicktake. I'm Tom Gale. My guest this week is James Dorn of Dorn Group. James, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here.
I'd like to focus today on what end customers value most from their distributor partners. Dorn has done repeated surveys and monitoring of this over the years. So I'd like to get into some of the details today, James, on how you're seeing this change and what our listeners should pay attention to.
End customers, their businesses are changing a lot. So they're changing the way in which they operate. One of the things to keep track of if you're a distributor out there is designing a way to systematically get input from your customers as to what they value most today, not 6 months ago, not a year ago or 3 years ago, because it's ever changing. Tom, you mentioned we have this benchmarking survey that we do, and what we used to track is our top 3 things that end customers valued. We called that our top 3 leaderboard. Well, there's now a number 4 that is coming up just as equally as important as the top 3. Let's look at 2019 and earlier. There were 3 things that end customers valued the most. The first was support. And that would include, hey, we're getting knowledgeable support from our distributor through account managers, through inside sales, those types of channels. So support was the number 1 thing that was valued. The number 2 thing was price, being able to get a fair and competitive price for products. And the number 3 thing that was important to end customers was delivery and availability. So can I get it same day, next day? And is it in inventory? Those were the top 3 things for most B2B distribution companies for largely the 20th century. It wasn't until 2020, obviously, things took a big change through that. But, the number 1 factor that end customers value the most through 2020 and into the first part of 2023 was availability. So that jumped from being in the number 3 slot up to the number 1 slot. And for obvious reasons. I mean, it was hard to get products. The supply chain was going through struggles and whatnot. So that makes sense. But number 2 during this period was support, which used to be the number 1 thing. And you'll start to see a trend here with support of that is continuing to decrease in level of importance. But number 3, which used to be number 2, was price. So in this period of time, you had availability, support, and price. Those were the top 3 things. Now you move into the third quarter of 2023, and this is where we're seeing a big shift in data here. And that's where the number 1 thing that end customers are valuing from their distributor partner is price. That used to be the 3rd most important attribute over the last 2-3 years. But most recently, price has climbed to the number 1 slot here. Closely followed by availability, which used to be in the 1st slot. Availability is now in the 2nd slot. And in the 3rd slot, you can see support has shifted down again. So in 2019, support was 1. Then it moved down to slot 2, and now it's slot number 3. And all of this makes sense, Tom, if you kind of look at the why behind it. Price, as we mentioned, end customers have taken on unprecedented price increases over the last 2-3 years. So they are actively trying to take costs out of their business. And this is important for distributors for 2 reasons. 1, you can play defense to keep the business you have with customers. Because they are looking and shopping for price, it's going to be harder and harder to do that. But the second reason it's important is you could use price as a great way to steal market share. So to go after customers in new ways to where you can take costs out of their business, price being the number 1 aspect today, awesome opportunity to defend your share and actually grow your share. What used to be the number 1 differentiator for distribution is relationships and the support they were giving to their customers. We're seeing that trend downward, Tom, to where now it is the number 3 slot, whereas in 2019 it was in the number 1
Well, there's
slot.
going to be a lot of people listening to this saying, well, not for me because I'm different.
And I think it's one of those things, Tom, where we're looking at data directly from end customers across many sectors in distribution. And these things don't become apparent unless you're able to ask the questions in a similar way over a long period of time. You can start to really notice the trending of what's important to end customers and what's starting to become less important to end customers. Now, don't get me wrong, support is still absolutely critical here, but when you start to see more and more responses into these other areas of what's truly important to them at this moment in time, that's where we're starting to see a shift in data.
As far as support, in the survey that you do, can you give an idea across the spectrum in terms of commodity products versus highly technical products, where of course support would be much more important? Do you have a good read in terms of the mix that's in the survey?
This is predominantly throughout all sectors, a lot of different product categories. You see it more definitely with more commodity-oriented products and less with, larger CapEx type stuff where it requires a lot of technical expertise.
So talk about some of the ways that you're seeing digital rise in this equation.
Digital is what is not surprising to the audience here, how it's trending up, but it was surprising to us to see it trending so close to the level of importance for end customers, being in the number 4 slot here, to a point to where historically there used to be a huge drop off. Outside of the top 3 factors of what mattered most, there was just a huge disparity of things that mattered to end customers. But more and more respondents and data is showing that digital is just as important and getting close to those top 3 slots, to where we're now going to start tracking it as our top 4 in the leaderboard for what's most important to end customers. Now, digital, you could break down into a few buckets. And this is the way our survey works, is you got digital services, which is, hey, I want to be able to do a stock check, download spec sheets, invoices. Then you got digital integration, which is, connectivity like EDI. You got punch outs in there, estimating, other business systems and tools that are in that bucket. And then you have online ordering. And this is where you get the full, click to cart ordering and whatnot. Now, we're going to truncate all those into just a bucket of digital for purposes of today, but we have all that data separated out. But digital between those 3 buckets is just becoming more and more important across all these other factors of what end customers value most from their distributor partners.
Where do you see this moving in 2024 and beyond?
Tom, what we're seeing is the top 4 is what we were really intrigued with. If you look at the trending of support and how that's gone from number 1 to number 3, does that move to a number 4 slot at some point? And do these historic top 3 factors start to become a different mix? I mean, even when you look beyond digital, Tom, we're tracking things like value adds, right? And this could be value-added services or value-added components that you're providing to the end customer. So let's just break that down, the value-added engineering services. That could be finding alternative and lower cost solutions. You could look at product assembly, where you're, kitting certain products or doing prefab or certain assemblies. All of these value-added services, they are very close behind what we're seeing when we see digital. Value adds are closely behind digital. So looking forward, will you start to see more of these digital and value-added services rise to the top 3, top 4? That's what we're anticipating here, Tom. Obviously, things have a way of reverting to the mean over a long period of time. So things like price and availability, maybe those aren't as big of a factor moving forward a year or so from now, but they are extremely critical at this point in time with how end customers are trying to adjust the way they do business to remain competitive in their own markets.
I'm wondering, James, whether, as far as support goes, whether digital just is become such an important component of support.
It's super interesting to talk about, right, Tom? Especially when you compare it with the amount of decades that you've been in this business, right? Just to see, were we previously at another moment like this in the history of distribution? And there's one way I look at it too. Like when you bring up things like AI, AI is very new right now, but once AI is out there, it's almost going to become a point of parity because everybody will have it. It's like having a laptop at a certain point, right? Now, there's going to be early adopters going to go to capture share on the onset, but at a certain point, having that fax machine, Tom, was just a point of parity, right? Having AI will be a point of parity, but some of these other factors of what's most important to an end customer at this moment in time, the more you have your pulse on that, or that finger on that pulse of what's important to your customer, the better you're going to be able to react and potentially steal that business away from your competitors.
And I do appreciate that that you referenced the decades that I've been in this industry and not the centuries that I've been in this industry, which would have been valid too, actually, now that we think about it. But what are the key pieces here that are really going to move the needle as far as keeping track of your customers going forward?
If you're a distributor out there, make sure that you have a formal mechanism for capturing input directly from your end customer. And don't just rely on anecdotal feedback. Have a formal method for capturing this input and do it frequently, because so much is changing right now, and that rapid speed of how quickly it changes, it's only getting faster. So make sure that you've got that feedback loop directly from your end customers, and personalize this to your business. Start here with the big four of what you're hearing and seeing from across our database of end customers out there, but personalize this to your business and make sure that you're guiding your teams into delivering the value that's most important to your end customer at this moment in time.
And make sure you're using data to do that.
Absolutely, Tom. The data is the foundation of this. And which reminds me, we have a data analytics summit coming up on December 6th, right, Tom?
And we are quickly filling out the panelist sections, and we've got some great distributors across a lot of different sectors. I'm particularly excited for your session, James, because you are going to have 3 panelists, and you're going to have a manufacturer's rep, and a distributor in a conversation, and that's always valuable in terms of those perspectives.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Tom. Great lineup of speakers, and the topics are expanding at this point in time to where all of these topics and more will be discussed, including what do we got? Customer segmentation. We've got product segmentation, market development. So really interesting topics, and great panelists will be at this event. So looking forward to seeing everybody there.
And market profiling, market share analysis, as well as wallet share analysis. All of it that's really oriented around unlocking growth in the year ahead, optimizing operations, and how to stay competitive over the next 12 months.
Great topics, Tom. Looking forward to seeing everyone.
Talk soon.